People who fell in love with your mortal enemy. What's your story? Max and I didn't just dislike each other. We went out of our way to make each other miserable. The man barely introduced himself before cherry-picking my best leads and called it mentorship. I knew we weren't going to get along just from that, and he went out of his way to make it clear that he did not like me. It was week 4 when he accidentally deleted my entire client brief from SharePoint. This wasn't some tiny file either. It was weeks of research, meeting notes, and strategy docs. The client called me the next morning wondering why I'd ghosted their requests. I spent the entire week groveling, promising last-minute decks and living on caffeine. Max just sat 2 desks away, typing away with not a care in the world. I wasn't one to roll over though, so when I saw him pouring his precious soy milk into his latte, I swapped it out for whole milk the morning of his biggest quarterly pitch. To understand the brilliance of this plan, you have to understand that Max has severe lactose intolerance. He started his pitch to the CMO looking pale and sweating. 20 minutes in, he excused himself for urgent client business. He spent the rest of the day locked in the bathroom, missing the rest of his pitch, product training, 2 calls, and our department lunch. I saw him when our shifts were over and asked him what happened, saying we were all worried about him. He couldn't even glare at me, he just groaned. The pettiness kept climbing. He'd forget to CC me on scope change emails, and I'd walk into project meetings completely blindsided. He'd look at me from across the table and smirk when my boss asked, "Did you get the update?" I'd scramble through my inbox, then nod and fake it. After the 3rd time, I spent an hour renaming every one of his PowerPoint decks so they all looked the same. The day he opened Final Client V5 for a pitch to the CMO and saw slides filled with cat memes and a fake revenue forecast, I thought he was going to flip the table. Instead, he just froze. He tried to wing it while sweating bullets, but the CMO just got up and left. That same afternoon, the client called our office demanding a new account manager and asking what clown show they'd just witnessed. Max spent the rest of the week doing damage control, scrambling to fix his reputation, calling the client 3 times a day, and groveling through apology emails. Max glared at me the entire week like he was planning my funeral. That's how we ended up in HR's office together. They gave us both written warnings and signed us up for 8 sessions of collaborative coaching. The first coaching session felt like a hostage situation. We were supposed to brainstorm a social media push for a fictional new snack food, but we ended up arguing about fonts for half an hour instead. I told him Comic Sans was a hate crime. He said at least it had personality. By session 3, we started to click. We weren't nice, we just got each other. We argued about headlines but found ourselves finishing each other's sentences. One night we ended up at our desks past 10 and ate ramen while we argued over which Ghibli movie was best. I told him he had no taste because he ranked Spirited Away behind Ponyo. He called me a snob. Session 5, we had to work late again and this time talked about our worst failures. I told him about the time I accidentally replied all to a client thread with a Shrek gif. He told me he once signed a pitch email, best fishes, and didn't notice for a week. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt, and when I calmed down, he told me I had a pretty laugh. I immediately asked him who he was and what had he done with Max, and Max just scoffed. I teased him some more about how he never complimented me, how the lack of sleep was making him dumber. I got real close to him, jabbed at his face, and he smiled through it all. I stopped when we made eye contact and then felt my heartbeat speed up when he looked at my lips. Next thing I knew, we were kissing. I don't mean a little peck. I mean 6 weeks of rage and late night tension exploded. We made out like we were teenagers. After he said, "This is a terrible idea, isn't it?" I said, "Absolutely." He smiled, and for the first time, I didn't want to punch him. Then we had a serious talk about our relationship and decided to keep it private from others. When coaching ended, we told HR we're still working through our differences, but outside of the office, we spend time together at our apartments and fancy restaurants. We're still competitive since he'd never let me win Mario Kart, but we're done sabotaging each other. Mostly. Sometimes I put fake spiders in his shoes just to keep things interesting.